Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, and international football, all from the perspective of a couple of Americans. This week featured our 7th league phase Champions League match at home versus Dinamo Zagreb, and an away match at Molineux Stadium against Wolves. Hello, Keith.
I believe it's Champions League phase. I think you have to say league twice in a row because it's for maximum difficulty and tongue twisterness.
Or else it's not canonical.
Look, listen, we're all about doing things to the letter of the law on this show.
And UEFA is a stickler. I mean, they're the ones who get our shorts taken down if there's more than one frame of any match. So I stand corrected. I retract it. Champions League phase. There we go.
Yeah. Don't worry, it'll all be over soon.
Man, I thought Molineux was going to be the hardest thing I had to say in that paragraph.
No, but I can read your notes. You did spell it incorrectly, but that's neither here nor there. It's not important right now.
So one thing that was kind of funny this week. So ordinarily, I almost always end up watching the matches time shifted later in the day. Typically try to stay as spoiler free as I can, and the less time in between when it actually happens and when I watch it, the easier that is to maintain. This week it just worked out. I had a busy schedule on the Wednesday that they played. I was editing our Thursday short that night, Thursday, maybe Friday too, and it took me a little bit, so I ended up watching the match the next day on Thursday. While I was editing the short, of course, I'm looking up pictures of Arsenal things. It was the Academy for our third short last week. We were talking about Hale End, and that is the Arsenal Academy. So I'm searching for Arsenal Academy, and as I typed ARSE into Safari, it of course assumed that what I want are scores. Now, I'm good enough at detecting Arsenal spoilage, and my eyes immediately looked away. But of course, there's a little bit of image retention. I saw something flash before my eyes, and I went into this match thinking that I had seen Safari telling me that Arsenal lost to Dinamo Zagreb 1-2. But I saw it unclearly enough, and there was enough margin of doubt that I wasn't convinced of that. And, clearly at some point it became, well, okay, we got 2, not 1. So it's all suspect now. But yeah, so, and then also, of course, I was looking for podcasts to listen to, and I saw, title of one of the, Arsblog or Handbrake Off, that they had one that was called Kai High, which, as it turns out, is not particularly spoilerific for Dinamo Zagreb necessarily.
No.
Yeah, he did get one, but it wasn't that could have been the one that that I thought I saw ahead of time. So that was kind of funny. So we have some follow-up this week for last episode, but first, from way back over this past summer when we watched and discussed the 1992 Rodney Dangerfield vehicle, Ladybugs. And we talked about the movie. Generally, we kind of liked it. We did some shorts talking about it, and one of the shorts was follow-up on how to pronounce the supporting actress Jackée with an accent Harry's first name. I'd been saying Jackée throughout. That kind of looked to me like what it should have been. And at one point you asked me, are we sure it's how it's pronounced? And I was like, yeah, I really don't know. It kind of looks like it. And I looked it up. And for one of the shorts, I was pretty convinced that no, it is actually Jackée. Someone else says Jackée, and okay, it's just Jackée Harry. And she just spells Jackie weird. Okay, so we actually put out a short saying that that's how it was pronounced. Well, user I don't like you is apparently how it's pronounced. I don't like you. Well, we like you. He wrote in to tell us that it is Jackée, right? And I questioned that. I pushed back, and he said, actually, I just watched an interview with her on The Real. It is Jackée. Or at least she didn't bother correcting the hosts and her old co-star Tamara Mowry. I guess she was on Sister Sister with those two twin actresses, and one of them was calling her Jackée. So it might have been awkward for her to say something, but there is now evidence to the contrary. So maybe we stand corrected on that one.
Yeah, mysteries I never expected to be solved this week, I suppose. Okay.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in more recent follow-up, so last episode we were talking about bringing in, players for the front line, and you were talking about how, well, yeah, of course we got rid of Emile Smith-Rowe and Eddie Nketiah. It made sense at the time. And when you were talking about that, you were saying Nwaneri instead of Nketiah. And it was just kind of funny to me because they're two academy kids who have like semi-silent or like leading ends in an unexpected way at the beginning of their names, and it kind of sounds similar. It's funny.
Oops. Well, definitely a mistake. I certainly didn't mean to mix them up. It's not quite oh God, who was that? Was that Kieran Gibbs and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and a mistaken identity red card in a game?
Oh no.
Or something. Oh, it was. Yeah, but that was I don't want to sit here and say the two of them look the same. They obviously were very distinctive faces, but yeah, it was a mistaken identity case that did not reflect well in the official. Let's just say that.
Oh, maybe that's what happened this week.
No. I do think it is interesting though, in the sense they have as you put it, the leading end. We've talked about with Nketiah, you pronounce it directly there, whereas with Nwaneri, what we've seen is you effectively don't pronounce it, which I find interesting.
Well, there isn't much that we wanted to talk about in the way of news. I guess I just really wanted to check in. We didn't see Mikel Merino or Martin Odegaard in yesterday's match. How are they doing? What's up with them?
Right. So with Odegaard, apparently he's ill or was ill. Hopefully was. It's past tense at this point. But he was ill and so was unable to make the matchday squad at all. With Merino, I believe the line from Arteta was it was a knock in training. So disappointing. Hopefully that's a minor issue. Mm-hmm. But that apparently was why both of them were missing from the squad on Saturday, which, regardless of other aspects of the game, certainly you could tell by the end, we're definitely, even going in, looking at the lineup, we're a little short staffed, so to speak. And I'm not going to say nobody's coming in, but boy, right now it doesn't seem like we're really. It doesn't seem like we're in advanced negotiations with anyone. Now the window is open through, I believe it's Monday of next week. I'm trying to look at through Monday of next week. So it doesn't close on the 31st. I think it closes on like the 3rd or the 4th.
A little bit of a grace period, yeah.
Yeah, so into the following week. So the January window, but we're now a week left, and it doesn't look like it doesn't. Again, I don't know. Sometimes these things move fast. Think about what was it? Trossard or Jorginho were pretty quick deals,
right?
It's slim pickings from our regard, and you almost feel like they want someone or need someone at this point. Mostly, it's just I don't want to say just a warm body, but like somebody that can actually come onto the field and run around for a little bit, because we're just running on people who can do that. Poor Kai Havertz.
Play on the senior team, like relieve, like bring fresh legs at the end of a match at this point. Yeah.
Having said that, the Ben White is apparently close.
Oh, okay.
Fingers crossed on that. Tomiyasu is apparently, I guess, close-ish as well. I don't really know.
It's been so long with Tomiyasu and Ben White. It's like I forget about them completely sometimes.
And we did get Nwaneri back this week, which was nice to see he's back. So some of it is improving, but it's still coming from a fairly weakened position, and with the 2 games a week. On the other hand, if we can get through, we have 2 weeks of this. We have two games this week. Next week is Newcastle, and then oh God, who do we have after that? I forget who the last one of this, but if we get through those games, like we actually can get like a week off. Mm-hmm. Or maybe Newcastle is actually the one we get the week off. Hang on, just a quick look at the calendar. Yes, if we get through the Newcastle game, then we get 10 days off because we get the weekend off. So then we get Leicester on the 15th. So, but boy, that's a heck of a 3 games we have. Heck of a 3 games we have coming up. So,
yeah. Well, shall we begin our first match of the week?
Yes, let's do that. So Champions League.
Yeah, so we played Dinamo Zagreb, a team that heretofore I hadn't seen play before. To begin with, have you, what can you tell me about them going into this?
So Dinamo Zagreb is one of the premier clubs in Croatia, in the capital city, Zagreb.
I recognize the white and red checks that are part of their crest.
Mm-hmm. They are, I believe I think they said the 2-time defending champs. So they've won the league the last few years. They're one of those clubs. We've sort of talked about them in other European contexts where you look at them and say to yourself, "Oh, we don't have to worry about them. They come from a lesser league and all of that." But this is a team that, in some respects, has more Champions League experience than we do.
Right, because they were in it all the time.
Because they're in it constantly.
Yeah.
This year they're currently coming in. So they're third in the Croatian league, coming around in the early part of the second half of that season. Still within spitting distance of the top, but they've been sitting in a solid third for most of the year. So certainly not done. But then again, obviously here in the Champions League, currently coming into the game and afterwards because of a result elsewhere, are currently level on points with Manchester City, which is, let's put it this way. If you had told me Dinamo Zagreb was level on points with Manchester City, your reaction probably would have been, wow, Zagreb's having a great league phase, and not, what happened to Manchester City?
Yeah, exactly. I did notice also on their crest, they have 3 stars. What are those for? Is that for the Euros, or is that for the Champions League?
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not 100% sure. It could be, and we've sort of talked about this a little bit, that if you win enough titles, they change the color of the stars.
They could be gold stars, right? So it's like 30 Croatian championships,
right? Now again,
okay.
Now, per Wikipedia, they've won 25 league titles in Croatia, which we should point out the Croatian league has only existed for a little more than 30 years, because Croatia has only existed for a little more than 30 years. What am I looking at here? Yes, they've won. I'm sorry, I said 2 straight league titles. They've won 7 straight league titles. They've also won the Yugoslavian League 9 times. I'll be honest, I don't know where all of those come from. In terms of the stars, it could just be decorative at this point. There are, some leagues take the star thing very seriously in a very organized way, and some leagues don't care. Like England doesn't really. It's just not a thing that happens in the English league.
Right.
It's more of a continental thing with the stars.
Yeah. All right. So,
by the way, we should add one last little bit about Dinamo Zagreb. It did get mentioned in there. Arsenal does have a former Dinamo Zagreb player on the roster. A young Gabriel Magalhaes suited up one game for Dinamo Zagreb while he was on loan for, I believe he was at Lille before in France. He was loaned out to Zagreb. Apparently only played in one game with them. So,
interesting.
And we have played them. I have seen them a couple of times. This was mentioned, I think, in the broadcast. Arsenal had played them, I think, in like some older versions of the Champions League, either in group stage or in the qualification rounds. So pre-group stage. In the years Arsenal finished in 4th, there was a period, a long stretch where for the Premier League that got you with a qualification round. So you had to win home and away in August in a Champions League tie, which generally went pretty fine for Arsenal. But you had to do. That's what you had to do to get into the group phase.
Yeah, makes sense. So I guess as we begin talking about this match, I mean, like the goal in the second minute certainly helped things a lot.
Oh yeah, great little one touch, back and forth, and Declan Rice with the finish. I thought he was great in this game overall.
Yeah.
It is kind of one of those when you score so quickly, sometimes it kind of takes you aback. Like, oh wait, we scored already? Oh, okay. I guess we're doing this now. So that was enjoyable. I thought it was a great little play to get going. And again, Zagreb needed a result, and given they're away for this game, they may have come into this looking for, can we snatch a draw? So to get the continental teams in general are not going to be quite as park the bus as we'll see in the Premier League, but I think scoring a goal early forced them to open up a little bit, and they are a dangerous team. I mean, again, we talked about some of their experience. There are a couple of talented players on there who can cause you problems, and they generated a couple of chances. But to get a goal early, to really kind of it really sort of sets the tone. I mean, remember that stretch around this time a year ago where we were racking up big wins. Why? Well, part of it is we scored quickly and forced the opponents to come to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It was also not too long after that, I guess, Declan Rice got bored. He scored his goal. He was fine. And, he decided to take up trash collection, right, as he goes for his corner kicks.
Yes, in front of taking the corner in front of the Zagreb fans. I mean, that's just kind of unfortunate. It's just the throwing of stuff like that.
One thing I did want to ask you about on another show, they were just talking about Arsenal seems to be unique in the Premier League for the size and position of their visiting fans section. And they were talking about how a lot of other clubs, they'll put them like higher up away from the pitch, maybe fewer visiting fans overall. Then this came up a couple weeks ago. I forget which match it was that prompted that, where there was a particularly boisterous visiting section or something, which was definitely the case with Dinamo. Like, I don't think I heard any Arsenal chants the whole time. It was definitely their fans that I was hearing the whole time. And
eventually, yeah, but they were definitely, I mean, part of it is the difference in a traveling fan base. The fans who travel are the diehards.
Right.
And especially for a European game, because one, you're dealing with sort of the supporter culture out of the continent. You're dealing with the diehards of that culture. They're making the travel. And it's a Wednesday, right? You're skipping, 2 days of work you're skipping. Now, maybe that's an American way to think about it. But it takes a certain kind of person to go do that, and they're going to generate a certain. And we've seen that the other way too. There are concerns about, ticket sales for Arsenal. And look, Zagreb is not one of the premier opponents we're going to see. It's the middle of the week. Champions League tickets can be expensive, especially even for an Arsenal, which I think is among, if not the most expensive already in the league. So sometimes it does kind of diminish the home crowd a little bit, especially for a match like this. Maybe not when it was PSG, for example, but for Dinamo Zagreb, you could see how that might be the crowd might be a little different. But yeah, they were, it does help create a good atmosphere, but the trash throwing is one of those, like, come on, what are we doing? Come on, don't do that.
It seems like it's, and again, I'm going largely off of others' commentary, and I'm trying to remember corroborating or dispositive evidence, but it seems like other clubs maybe don't give like prime real estate, like all the way down to pitch side to visiting fans. Like, we're giving them the opportunity, even regardless of throwing garbage, just to heckle and try and distract our own players taking a corner kick at home, right? Like, do other clubs do that in the Premier League as much?
I mean, the number of tickets you give away, I believe, is partly a percentage of the ground.
Okay.
So ours will look like a lot, in part because we have one of the bigger grounds in the league. Part of as for the positioning, I mean, we've had some in the smaller stadiums. We'll get like right behind one of the goals. We'll see the visiting fans. I mean, it's check out sometimes. To me, it doesn't seem particularly unusual to see where the Arsenal fans are, or the away fans are at the Emirates, because you watch Arsenal away games and look where our fans are. They're on pitch level. I mean, they'll get a slice of the stands, and a lot of that stems from the fact that there's a much stricter segregation amongst the fan bases,
right?
And because of that, that leads to a lot of like logistical elements as far as where they come in, where they go, when they come in and out,
right?
And there's protocols built into the Premier League and the Champions League by handling that sort of thing. So
right. Oh yeah, this wouldn't even be a discussion at all if we were talking about an American sports team. Like, everybody's just commingled and there's nothing to talk about.
You will see elements. Colleges are a little more like this, especially because College Arena will always have the student section, an area given over to the students, and the visitors are usually a little more segregated in those environments as well, partly because they're stuck. Usually they end up being put right around their team's bench, because a lot of it tends, certainly be some friends and family. And a lot of it is also fans just tend to want to clump together, especially as visitors. But they're definitely more strictly segregated in this environment.
Yeah. So in the 10th minute of this match, we had what looked pretty clearly to me like a handball. Did you catch that by Dinamo, I should say?
I thought so too. It didn't really get a lot of comment from the Arsenal players or the or even the broadcast. I should mention I was watching this game, so our school was closed due to the weather here in Houston on Wednesday. So I was nice and comfortable at home watching. I don't. It didn't seem like there was a lot of talk about it, but yeah, it sure seemed like a clear handball to me. His hand was away from his body. Again, if we weren't already up 1-0, I would have been a little bit more bothered by it. But it was kind of that felt curious to me. And we've talked about this a little bit. The way handballs are adjudicated in Europe is a little different than it is in England. And
that's right. I'd forgotten. Yep.
Yeah, so there is a difference there, which might be part of it, and I just kind of missed that. But it was a little annoying. But again, kind of the way the game played out. Again, he didn't get a lot of pushback from the Arsenal players, I thought. Which says something.
I mean, the one thing that I thought was funny, though, is Kai Havertz in particular was like kind of holding out his arm and like pointing to it and like really trying to get the ref to see his view on it after what had just happened to him the week before. It's like, come on, look what happened to me.
Yeah, I mean, there are those that, like, if you see it, immediately your instinct is always just, regardless of the circumstances, I saw the ball touch arm. Get the referee's attention. And you'll see that as well. If they think it's offside, someone will score a goal, and half the defenders who have been beat are all like, looking for the offside, which, most of the time they look kind of silly. But, I thought it certainly hit the hand. That could just be the difference in the European.
Right. It probably was a case of ball to hand, and they don't call that, and it's the end of it. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, the rest of the first half went, we kept the pressure on, we kept on generating chances, didn't really convert any, but didn't let off the gas as far as I was concerned in the first half.
No, I thought overall we played fairly well. I think Zagreb is going to be a little more open, so it doesn't have that same kind of trying to break that frustration of trying to break down the low block that we usually end up seeing. Mm-hmm. It was a little frustrating. We generated some opportunities for Havertz, who was has been struggling. Raheem Sterling was there, I think. I mean, I don't want to say that we've entirely both washed our hands of Raheem Sterling, but I think you and I are both kind of the opinion that we're really not expecting much from him at this point.
No, we have no expectations. It's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, he's there when we need someone, and there's no one else to pick.
And he was, I thought he was fine in this game, but that's kind of it feels like that's probably about as good as we're going to get from him, honestly. Yeah. Which, at this point, this was a game you don't want to say you're taking a breather, but given some of the intensity and some of the teams we've been playing in the last few weeks, I mean, even just forgetting for a moment our comments on officiating or the pace of the games. I mean, Newcastle, United, Spurs, Villa, like that's a tough sequence of games. I mean, I know, United, but like, even so, that's not that was, there were difficult elements of that. Even if it wasn't a particularly tough opponent, we ended up playing an extra half hour, which is not really how I think we wanted that to go, regardless of the result. So, Zagreb was a sense sort of capping off this 5-game homestand. I thought we did well to get the result we did overall. I thought we played it pretty well overall in this game.
Yeah, I mean, so in the first half, I was a little disappointed we didn't score more. I felt like this is a match where we should be kind of racking up the goal difference a little bit. And then, they ended up doing that in the second half. They ended up converting a couple more, one of them in stoppage time, which was pretty sweet. And we got to see a player that we haven't seen heretofore, Nathan Butler-Oyedeji.
Oh, yes.
Came on for Martinelli at the end.
Got his 30 seconds on the field.
Right.
You could tell because you saw him like at the stoppage time. He was getting up and Arteta was ready. But I think the only stoppage we had before the sub was a corner, and you're not going to throw the kid on in a corner, like in a corner situation like that. You want your regulars on there to make it run that play, and then you could So he got his 30 seconds, which good for him.
Speaking of corners, I'm glad you brought that up. In this match in particular, I noticed we didn't seem to be doing our normal thing with corners, right? Normally you expect they line up at the far post And then the hand goes up, and some number of seconds later, they kind of rush forward into whatever positions they're going to take up. We weren't doing that this time. It seemed like they were kind of clustered all over the 18-yard box waiting for the ball. Do you have any thoughts on why that might have been?
I generally, I just think it's the interest of trying something new.
Okay.
I think you just want to be able to do something a little different now and again, because the point is you're giving your opposition who's scouting you in advance, right, different things to look at. So, yeah. And also for yourself, right, because if you keep running the same play, there are ways to do it. We didn't talk about this a lot, but go back to the week we played Spurs and United, and they commented on it here, and I was thinking about it and watching it, sort of counting players. I don't know if it was commented on because I wasn't listening to those as I was watching those broadcasts, but we saw some of their Spurs and United have some players up near the half line. And as a result, I think we were pulling some of our players out of the box up on the half line because you can't have those guys basically cherry picking. And that might be one way to do it. At least I think with Spurs, maybe it was Villa was doing that. But the idea is you're pulling those players away, which gives you fewer bodies in the box, which sort of takes away from some of the blocking and other things we do. I think also, I think this was someone I was with made this comment talking about in the United game where there were a couple of instances where there were a couple of fouls, or a lot of the jostling in the box was going on to the point where the referee has to come in and talk to people, say no more. And he was speculating that some of that might have been intentional on United's part to throw off some of our timing. So there's a lot of again, our Arsenal as the good set piece club is kind of teams have to react to that, and that's some of what we're seeing there. So it could just be a chance, an attempt by Arsenal to kind of just change up some of their ideas and some of the things they're doing to do something different. But now, it did seem a little different.
With the Spurs players up near the midfield line, they wouldn't be offside if the ball made it to them?
No, the offside is only the case across the midline. So if you cannot be offside in your own end.
I don't know if that ever came up before. I think that's news to me. Okay.
So if those guys are standing there, that ball comes in, keeper grabs it and immediately just chucks it down the field.
Yeah.
As long as when he throws the ball, if you're on your side of the midfield line, you are onside. So that's why you, if you're Arsenal, you drop a couple players back, you have to account for those guys.
Yeah. Okay. Glad I asked.
So I remember that you can only be offside on the opposition's half. You cannot be offside in your own half. On the
offside, yeah. Not that's all. Remember that. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to cover with Dinamo before we move on to Wolves?
Just sort of some general bits and pieces with that. With the win, we have definitely clinched our spot in the playoffs in the round of 16, and I think we're in pretty good shape. The league table is very bunched up, and there's way too many permutations. But I think a draw in our final game would effectively clinch us a top 8 spot, which would be a much needed bye into the round of 16.
Okay, so we clinched our spot in the round of 16, but it's a matter of getting a bye versus a knockout round to get in there.
Right. So quickly on this. By the way, the Champions League draw will be this Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time, 5 a.m. my time. But the draw for that will be the end of this week, and then the first leg will be that during our bye week. So given what we've gone through, actually, it is really nice that we don't have to do that. We're not have to do that. I think as long as we get a draw, I think would clinch the spot. We're probably okay even if they did lose, but of course you'd rather not, and just kind of make that easier for everybody. But I think we're in good shape to qualify through. Liverpool and Barcelona are the only ones who have officially qualified for the top 8, but we look in good shape to do that. And
right. Okay. So if we... Now I think it's coming together. So if we draw or win, we don't need to participate in the round of 16. We're straight through.
No. We're straight to the round of 16. There is a knockout phase.
Okay.
So 24 teams go through. The top 8 advance to the round of 16, and then the bottom 16 are seeded. So that the placement does matter a bit, and there's a much larger thing, and UEFA has their whole bit with a video and everything that explains it. I kind of understand it, but it doesn't. It's one of those once you watch it play out, it'll make a lot more sense. But
you have to live it.
Yeah, I think if I'm reading all of their information correctly, that we are likely to face. Where we would face, assuming it ends, if we were to finish in third, we would face the teams seeded either 13 and 14 or 19 and 20. So potentially would be, based on this, I think our potential opponents for the round of 16 would be Brest, Borussia Dortmund, PSV Eindhoven, and Club Brugge. Now, again, that's not what the table is going to look like after Wednesday when this is all done. But that's roughly as I understand it. So it is a little bit more bracketed, but because of that, also, they're dropping all of the restrictions on who you could play. So we could play an English club. I mean, probably not because of the way the draw is working out, but we could play an English club, and we could play any of the teams that we saw on the league phase again. So,
So clinching a spot in the top 8 means that we're guaranteed to play against a more down table club. Yes. Is that basically what we're securing?
Yes, we get a bye into the round of 16. And then we'd be facing a team. Whoever we face would have been finished somewhere between 9th and 24th.
Okay, gotcha.
Now, again, we say this. You look at the table here. I mean, currently, Aston Villa is 9th. Borussia Dortmund, we mentioned, is 14th. Bayern Munich is 15th. Real Madrid is 16. Juventus 17.
So still some good teams down there.
PSG is 22. Yeah. Manchester City is 25. They're currently out right now. Now, I think they'll be able to. Who do they have? Let's look quickly who they have in their final game. They're home against Bruges. They should win that game. They should advance. But then again, they probably shouldn't have lost 3 games already in the Champions League. So anyway, point is. Until we see this all play out, we don't really know, and so like asking for certain opponents at this point is kind of it's not it's just not worth it at this point. A lot of things are probably going to shuffle around and change before the end of the day, Wednesday, and then we'll see what that looks like on Friday when the draw is made.
Yeah, all right. So that takes us to our match against Wolves. This occurred yesterday as we're recording on the 25th of January. I was looking at the wrong line in our notes. So this was our 22nd match. I believe we opened the season playing against Wolves, right?
Yes, they were our opening day opponent. Kind of gutted out a win there.
Yeah.
Oh, Bukayo Saka, how we miss you.
Really. So one thing I wanted to ask you about, and it became especially relevant later on, as we'll surely discuss, but I think on the commentary on the broadcast, and then also some people mentioned this in some other media I was taking in today about yesterday's events. What happened? I think it was Martinelli at Molineux Stadium. I think this is like the year before I started watching Arsenal.
Yes.
He got like 2 fouls in 5 seconds or something like that, or 2 yellows, I think, in 5 seconds or something.
The infamous double yellow.
Yeah. So what happened there?
Here's what happened. As best and I might be a little squirrely on some of the details, but here's roughly what happened. First, Martinelli was flagged, he interferes with a throw-in. So the player, I believe the Wolves player was going to throw it in. Martinelli kind of bumps him or knocks the ball around or something. Something kind of stupid, which you expect from a young kid. And he's carded for that, which, okay, the ball's thrown in, the Wolves player takes it, goes on a run, and then Martinelli fouls him, for which he is then subsequently yellow carded. That's, of course, 2 yellow cards, which now he's out of the game. What's unprecedented about that decision is no one actually knows he's gotten a yellow for the first foul until after the second one.
Oh.
Now, so remember that the referee is, generally is entitled to play advantage, right? And so you will see retroactive yellows where a yellow card foul is committed, play goes on, and then you go back, and once you reach an actual stoppage, the referee, pulls the player over and says, okay, for that one before, yellow. Now, the first yellow is a dead ball foul. The ball is out of play. There is
Right.
no reason for that ball to go in like that. And it's especially given if you decided to give the yellow, he's now playing on a yellow and doesn't realize it. And not because
Right.
he doesn't know, but because he hasn't been told he's received a yellow. As far as
That's
he knows,
the whole
he's fine.
point of the yellow card is be careful. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was fun. And yeah, that's less a, again, Arsenal fans have a reputation for having a bit of a persecution complex over the last few years, and stuff like that fuels it. That's where stuff like that comes from, which brings us to the game. But yeah, that's not something we're going to talk about, except for what actually happened in this game.
Yeah. So yeah, there are other things that we can get to after, but clearly the one thing that you cannot talk about this match without talking about is the straight red given to Miles Lewis-Skelly in the 43rd minute, almost at halftime, but not quite, reminiscent of Trossard being sent off at Manchester City. Or I guess home with Manchester City. But anyways, so as I'm watching this, I'll give my thoughts. I think you're probably going to take a little bit longer on this, so I'll get my thoughts out there and let you take it away. So basically, it looked to me like when he first made contact with Doherty, I think it was pronounced, which is not how I would pronounce that name, but it sounded like how the commentators were pronouncing it. I would say Doherty, but so Doherty gets the ball. He's on the break. Miles Lewis-Skelly makes what I would expect to be a yellow card offense, a cynical foul, stopping him on the break. Not dog so because they're still in their own half. I mean, we've seen this before where, it's not anywhere near obvious goal scoring opportunity yet. Any number of things could happen where, maybe it's not a straight red for that reason. But Michael Oliver pulls out the red. And by the way, was Michael Oliver the one who sent off Trossard in the Manchester City match? Or was that Anthony Taylor?
I believe that was Anthony. I believe Oliver was the one who made the call on Declan Rice in the Brighton game, that second yellow.
Right. So anyways, so he pulls out the red card and I'm thinking, wait, what? And they show the replays and the commentators are kind of trying to fill in their potential explanations. And this is informed by, I'm pretty sure they hear the VAR in their ear, like just as they're describing what's going on, they're hearing some commentary from the officiating team. But it sounds like it comes down to the studs being above the ankle instead of below the ankle makes it what is the phrase? The serious
violent conduct.
Yeah, serious foul play or violent conduct, right? And it just, no matter how many times I see that back, that does not look violent. It does not look like serious foul play. It does not even look like foul play. It looks like what you would typically see with a tactical, cynical yellow, where you expect to get a yellow for that. You stop the goal anyways, and okay, he didn't have a yellow yet. That's his contribution to that play. And, maybe he ends up getting subbed off at halftime if they're worried about him getting another yellow or something. But that's the way the game is played. And then it goes to VAR. And I personally, given all our discussions about what VAR does and doesn't do, I wasn't particularly hopeful that VAR was going to step in. He saw exactly what happened. Like, Michael Oliver was right there. He saw it. He made the decision. And I didn't think there was a likelihood of VAR reversing it. It sounds like other people were hopeful that they would be the voice of reason and come in and say, no, that's not a red card. Now, there also, we do talk about VAR having purview over red cards in a different way than they do over other non-red card decisions. But my understanding is that is typically issuing a red card not given rather than contradicting a red card that was given on the field. So that's basically everything I have to say. Begin rant.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal fans have a persecution complex because of stuff like this. This is a foul that happens in every single game in any league around the world. You can be bothered by it. I mean, there's an element of it that says it's so basically cynical, but it's a foul that is consistently penalized with a yellow. I don't think anyone in the stadium would have been shocked And in fact, I think we were all prepared to applaud Lewis Skelly for taking the yellow given the circumstances. Now, maybe it was a bit rash in the sense that, like, look, you got cover on two guys. You didn't have to do that. But, it's certainly not something that he's going to get in any sort of trouble or take any criticism for from, from his teammates or from the coaching staff in the way you would, a young player making a stupid play. But that's not what happened, apparently. Mm-hmm. That now we've decided, apparently, which, by the way, people are making comments. I think it was Mike Dean said something about him, studs on the Achilles. Like, open a freaking anatomy book. Jeez. Like,
it was the front of his foot.
No, it's a trip. Yeah. It's a plain and blatant trip. And again, should have been a yellow. But the straight red. And so, yeah, as you point out, VAR is not going to overturn that because it's, the call is for violent conduct. There's nothing in there like the idea of overturning it would have been as if there's no contact. Like if Lewis Skelly gets his foot in and Doherty trips himself, or we've seen those instances where we've seen penalties taken away. Oh, we thought there was contact, but actually he doesn't touch him at all. Okay,
right.
Yeah.
Which would make it clear and obvious if there's no contact. Right. It's clearly and obviously not a red card. Right.
Right. And so I now there is some conversation, and I haven't seen like a transcript of anything what's being said that, perhaps the VAR. I mean, Michael Oliver is a senior referee who carries a certain amount of reputation and weight. He is, for some reason, regarded as one of the better referees in England. And so that, it was, I don't want to say he intimidated them, but to the VAR, it was almost certainly going to be a less senior official. Obviously,
right. They're deferential at least. Yeah.
Yeah. To feel a little more deferential. But I think based on that, but again, like it shouldn't have come to that. It's a decision that is so mind-bogglingly out of step with the way the game is played, with the way the game is officiated. Again, you can be bothered by that, but who has ever seen a red card given in that circumstance? Mm-hmm. And if your argument is about like studs on the foot, we see that every game and not get called.
Yeah, such as later in this very same game.
And by the way, this is the same Michael Oliver who, as we mentioned before, gave the second yellow to Declan Rice. Where he had to. Why? Because someone kicked the ball into him on the second yellow. That was in the Brighton game. The same Michael Oliver who refused to give any yellows to Kovacic after he went studs up into Martin Odegaard's ankle because he, quote, didn't want to ruin the game. Mm-hmm. He's gonna have to time us. I know it's a family-friendly show, but it's just so mind-bendingly ridiculous. And I don't, me, I don't allege conspiracies. That's not, because if you believe in a conspiracy, then you can't really watch the game. Although I know a few people who are like, I'm just going to leave. I can't keep watching this. Mm-hmm. Mostly I don't allege conspiracy because conspiracy requires a level of competence I just don't think these men can even aspire to in this context. Like, it's just, this is ridiculous. It's a completely nonsensical decision given the circumstance. And it's made doubly worse, so I'll mention, by the way that it was inconsistently officiated within the same game. Mm-hmm. First, I mean, do we want to go ahead to Joao Gomez? Do you want to come back to that? Or
yeah. I mean, so first, the one thing I will say is it's so clearly wrong that either he is completely incompetent or there's some level of bias. Now, maybe it's subconscious bias, right? That's the most charitable way you could probably describe it, is some kind of subconscious bias at the very least, right? There's no proof to say, no evidence to say that it's conscious bias, but you can't, like you said, his reputation is not such that you would think he's just completely incompetent and doesn't know what the heck he's doing, right? Like, you wouldn't think that. But when he makes this call, and then later in the same match, not only does he have the opportunity to give Joao Gomez a second yellow for kicking the ball away a second time, which
happened twice, by the way. That was not one time. That was two occasions.
There were
Gomez
two that he didn't call?
Yeah.
I only
because that call is never made. That call is never made in that circumstance unless he feels like he has to. And instead, Joao Gomez is on the field to go studs up into Jurrien Timber a few minutes later, which, by the way, you can sit here and say, oh, well, it kind of evened out because he gave the red card. No, he didn't give a red card. He gave a second yellow for a by far dramatically worse and far more dangerous tackle. That's the truly annoying thing about this, is if the point of this is to protect the players. And look, look, this is a physical game, violent contact is going to happen. People are going to have clashes. But the point of that idea of violent contact is to protect the players. And you are just flat out ignoring some of those instances. And that is a legitimate difference. Because, by the way, we should point out, because it's a straight red, Lewis Kelly is going to be, at least as automatically, and this can be appealed, but is automatically going to be suspended for 3 games. Because it's 2 yellows, João Gomez will be suspended for 1 game. Right. That's complete horse. We've got a bleep button, I'm told, so I'm going to make some use of this. But it's just so infuriating. And why? Like, how does that happen? How does that sort of thing connect like this? And again, we're going to get one more work out of this. Amy Lawrence, longtime Arsenal writer, has been using a term, and other people have used it in other sports in the context, but she's been thinking for a while about what they call a off win. That you do just when it feels like you can't do anything else, you just walk in and say, the result in your place is, you know what, screw you. We're going to win this game anyway. And that is exactly what this game was.
No, definitely.
You saw, the best stretch of play we had in the entire game was the first 10, 15 minutes of the second half. I was a little concerned that we didn't actually score in that set because it was because you could see then. We're down to 10 men and our guys were tired. You could see them kind of running out of gas a little bit as Wolves kind of crawled their way back into it. And a Wolves team, which is frankly just not very good. And we've talked about this. They're kind of hanging on around the relegation zone. They're not a particularly good side, and it's just so many different ways for so many different reasons. We could have capitulated, conceded another goal, walked out of there at 1-1, like we've done a few times this season, or walked out with a draw. And I think that to a certain extent, or walked out at 0-0 and just said, no, screw it, we're going to win this game. And they grabbed it by the scruff, and they did it.
Yeah, they did. And it was kind of funny. So there's definitely that angle that, they were just rallying around the injustice of a situation and that it fueled them, right? But another part of me also had a different point of view on it, which is so Wolves, in a relegation battle, we're in a title battle, right? Wolves, who apparently hasn't had a clean sheet against us. They said on the broadcast it's been 50 or 60 years or something. It's not since the 1970s that they had a clean sheet against us.
Granted, a good chunk of that stems from the fact that Wolves was in the championship for a while.
Right.
They
weren't playing against us continuously. Right.
Yeah, it was Luton scored their first goal at the Emirates in 60 years last season or something because we haven't played them in forever.
Yeah. But those things put together kind of gave me a different view on this stretch of the game where we were outperforming them even down 1 man. It reminded me of my rec team where we just, we had a couple really strong kids and we were playing with 1 or 2 or sometimes I think even 3 fewer players than the other side all season long. And I wanted that because I think it's just better, but also we were strong enough that we were evenly matched more or less with being down. And it was against Manchester City, we were also ahead. And so that factored in strategically, but we bunkered, we did everything we could to just hold them back. This was not that. We were going for it. And at least part of that is they're just not as good as us and we could do that.
This was a game that, knowing our limitations as I walked in, that's a game where I'm look, man, I'll take one. Just give me 1-0 and let's get out of here. This was going to be a bit of a grind. And I expected Wolves to be basically what we saw, a team that was going to be a little more sit back and defend, partly because of their own, deficiencies, but also because it kind of makes sense in the context. And they were a little adventurous. They caught us out on the counter a couple times and had a few chances that on another day we're picking up out of the net. We haven't talked as much about individual players. I thought David Raya had a really good game. We've talked about this before. Arsenal has so much of the possession and the field is so tilted to the other way. As a keeper, in some ways, it's your mental focus that's a little tougher. that you have to sort of stay here to keep yourself in the game mentally, and he's able to do that. In particular, that save he made late. Oh gosh, who was it? This was late on.
Cunha, I think, in the 63rd minute was.
No, it wasn't. It's true. I forgot the Cunha one. There was another one. They had a ball in. I cannot think of the player's name. Where they sent him, they were able to send him in, and got up a shot, and it was a good save at tight angle. I'm Wolves roster.
Was it the Hee-Chan Wong shot?
No, those were
no, because those. Yeah, I guess I didn't note it. Yeah.
Who was it? It's driving me nuts. I can't think of the player's name. Where is he? I'm just pulling up their roster. Look and see. Aït-Nouri, Ryan Aït-Nouri.
Oh, okay.
Had a player coming in, so it was. But they stood tall, and you could tell. I mean, like at the full time whistle, like Kai Havertz just collapsed. Now he had a bit of a howler. He had a couple of chances early on. He does remind me this week, especially very much of. He does remind me very much of the Kai Havertz we saw the early part of last season, where he's getting himself into good positions and he's just kind of struggling to finish consistently, we should say, because he has quite a few goals. He's actually numbers wise had a fairly good season, but they kind of come in bunches for him,
right?
And alternately they don't come in bunches at all. They don't come at all. So, he basically collapsed at the end of the game. Rice was coming up a little gamey at the end. But overall, it was a game where they dug deep, and Calafiori, I mean, of all the shots to make it in, I was a little surprised that one made it.
Oh God. And I mean, you imagine what Arteta was thinking when he made the halftime sub, taking Nwaneri off. It's probably equal parts like getting Nwaneri out of there. You don't necessarily want him in that squad at that time under that situation, right?
Yeah.
But also bring on a defensive player, largely because that's what we have to put on, but also just make sure at the worst we don't lose this, at least keep it a scoreless draw.
Yeah, Butler-Oyedeji is not making his debut in this game.
Right? So Calafiori comes on. I think Arteta was almost certainly not imagining that that's where the goal would come from.
Maybe not, but that's the thing with Arsenal. We don't because we don't have a goal scorer. But maybe we don't have like a central like an Erling Haaland or Cole Palmer, right? We have a guy. We don't have a guy who scores the goals for us. The goals really can come from anywhere and everywhere. And so, in a sense, and there's some of the talk is that really what we need in terms of scoring is not so much a center forward. We need more scoring from the midfield. I mean, Odegaard's performance. We talked about his performance now. Injuries, health. Small child at home, like all these reasons why Odegaard hasn't quite been himself this season, but he scored a bunch of goals last year and he's just not doing it. He hasn't gotten them this year. Obviously Saka being out and the contributions he makes and sort of the kind of the goal, it's the goals we're not getting from certain positions. And so in that sense, Calafiori coming in, I mean, think about the 2 goals he scored this season, this one, and then his debut goal was away to City, which gave us the lead, which it was an incredible goal. So, it definitely just a game. And, you saw the way they celebrated. I mean, Calafiori just takes off for the sideline. The whole team there's definitely that team sense. And being away, I think, is part of it, too. When you're at home, you're kind of surrounded by your support. But when you're on the road, there is that sense of you do feel a little bit more isolated.
Yeah.
And, because again, I can say this in the collegiate atmosphere, right? Most of this was with the band as an undergrad, but we would travel to some games where we were the visiting fans.
Right.
And not that I faced too many cauldron environments, the level we played at. We didn't really draw that many people, but there are some times where you're it. Yeah. And there's a couple, maybe just a couple thousand people at the game, but 40 of them are you and your friends who are there to support your team, and then everybody else is for the other guys. And there's that sense that a few instances where the players recognize you afterwards and sort of come over, and they don't say it, but when they celebrate, they sort of bring you in because you were there. It was us. We were all that was here for this is us here. And we got one on you guys. And I think there was a little bit of that. And of course the refereeing played into that as well.
Yeah. But no, I mean, that shot was amazing, though. He just threaded the needle in exactly the right way, and it was very skillfully done. So, no, that was really amazing. And, yeah, just what a moment in that match to get that, and to get that then, with enough time left that, we could have maybe tried for another one. Didn't work out that way, but
I mean, I don't think we were really enough. I think, I mean, granted, obviously Wolves going down to 10 men, I think kind of that was it. Like they needed to score when it was 11 on 10 because, and I was listening to the Arscast this morning. He said, look, I mean, 10-man Arsenal is better than 10-man Wolves. Like we're just a better team than they are. And we, the fact that we didn't necessarily look like we were down a man for a good chunk of that game, even when we were, I think is evidence of that. And so once it's evened up at 10-10, I think that really, his comment, and I only remember this guy listen this morning, his comment was he didn't really feel like Wolves had a goal in. And there were a couple of times where I was like, I don't know about that. But overall, I mean, as we talked about, they're kind of, they're a weaker side. Apparently there's a lot of like internal problems with the club. The fans are angry at the ownership for not spending money. There are players kind of at each other and management. There's a lot of like internal tension with that team. And so, in a sense, they're probably the kind of team that you can rally against because they aren't very good. Like if you like, it's hard to have that same kind of thing, even against like say Spurs, who are who lost again today. But it's hard. Like they're good enough, they're talented enough that if you're having that thing where everything's sort of falling apart and you're not delivering on your chances, they can actually make you pay for it. Chelsea maybe. Chelsea's a decently strong side who are still better than. But against Wolves, I think that helps a lot that they're just kind of a mess.
No,
but you take what you can get.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I want to ask you about. So typically on the right side, Saka takes our corners. Well, he's out. Okay. In his absence, Odegaard has been taking our corners. He's out. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, instead of him, we've had Nwaneri taking corners. Well, in the second half, he was out.
Pulled, yeah.
Yeah. So who do we go to? We went to Trossard. That did not go very well. None of his corners had the loft that we rely on because it's really headers are what we're looking for from those corner kicks most of the time. They just were not placed the way that they should have been. Who should have been taking those corners, you think?
I don't know necessarily it's who, because I understand we like the in-swinging corner. We like the runs in from the far post. I mean, you see it. That was kind of interesting to talk about in the context of the Dynamo game, right? Where we're changing up our routine in corners. I feel like that this is an instance where you've got to have something else like in your bag, so to speak, as far as what to do. Because I don't think Trossard can make that, it can consistently enough make that kick. He's constantly hitting into the first man, which is like the thing you can't do on those kind of set pieces.
Right.
And I think that just means, you just have to account for that. Again, Trossard does a lot of things well. He's fine. Like he's taking the corners because we kind of need someone to take them. Or ultimately you put Declan Rice there and he'd do it with his off foot. And like I think you have to account for that. And it just felt like we didn't, which was a little frustrating to see.
Yeah, it's like after the first one, maybe they should have reconsidered instead of like trying it again for the next one on that side. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guess to me, like, it's not like you don't know that this is a weakness of Trossard. Like this is a thing that's going to be a struggle for him. It feels almost like, and again, they see them in training. Maybe he's dropping them on the back post in training. But yeah, I mean, even as we're lining up, we're like, please beat the first man. Oh, come on. And it like, you're kind of, you not say you're waiting for it, but you're kind of like, it was hard to expect any better, which feels like we've talked about this, like in the context of like Thomas Partey right back. Like, surely that cannot be the best possible option. Surely there's something else you can try.
Yeah. There was, one play. Do you remember this? It was like toward the end. It was like in the 83rd minute. I believe the player from Wolves was Bellegarde. He had the ball. He was like kind of making a run inside the 18-yard box, and something happened. And it looked like all of a sudden he was on an ice rink or something. And he was just kind of like in a slow motion fall, like kind of slowly slipping. And he ended up going all the way like off the byline with the ball. Do you remember that?
No,
it was just the kind of thing that it would, if you were having a nightmare about playing soccer, it's like the kind of thing that you would imagine yourself doing. Like you just like start slipping and you just like can't get yourself upright. And it was just, I was just cringing. Like, I felt bad for the guy. Like that's embarrassing. And I don't know what happened. That was really bizarre.
I don't remember that, but I mean, worked out for us.
Yeah, really. So,
Um,
player of the week.
I'm going to say Declan Rice. I thought he was particularly active in both games. He's definitely got that kind of, sort of captain-esque temperament about him. Gabriel wore the armband against Wolves, and that's fine. And I've said great things about Gabby all the time. I thought he was good. Saliba did a good job coming back in defense. But I think for Rice, not just the goal, but the constantly making active runs, constantly moving around. I do want to credit Havertz for his movement and his positioning, especially in the Wolves game. But but again, we sort of have to hold. If he's going to play that center forward position, he's got to put one of those in. And yeah, Jose Sa is a decent keeper, but like you got to put one of those in, and if he puts one of those in, are we even in a position where Lewis Skelly is making that tackle
right
at the end of the first half? I don't know, but but for me, it's Declan Rice.
Yeah. So if I were picking an Arsenal player of the match just for the Wolves match, I think it would be Hee-Chan Wang. I was thankful every time he had the ball. He was not having a good day. That was not good. I guess he's had a bad run of form lately. But
Strand Larson, who is the player who was hurt for and went off. He's one of their better players. That was a big loss for them.
Right. It sounds like things could have gone a lot differently actually if he hadn't gone off. That some of those tense moments that they failed to capitalize on, maybe he would have helped them capitalize. Yeah, but I'm mostly kidding. We forgot to bring him up earlier, so I wanted to
I believe he's a player that Pep Guardiola once referred to as the Korean guy. Someone explained this at Conte's interview. He was talking about playing Wolves, and he was rattling off a couple of their players, and he clearly just forgot his name, and said, and they have Pedro Neto, and Adama Traore and the Korean guy, and kind of just I believe it was him who was referring to there.
Yeah.
But anyways, me of that which was a good laugh.
But for real though, between these two matches, I would say actually Jurrien Timber for me. I particularly noticed a lot of really skillful moves in the Dinamo match. He was really on fire, great defensive moves, and some forward pushes that he was making that were helping things, breaking through the middle a little bit. But no, in the Wolves match too, just we miss him when he's gone, and he's one of those players that we've had enough to really make a difference when he's there. He helped keep our clean sheet in what didn't need to be a clean sheet match against Wolves. So
yeah, that's a fair. I did think he had a pretty good week. He's definitely there's a lot to like about him. We kind of forgot. He kind of forget sometimes that it's his first full season, actually his first real season with the club, because he was here last year.
Right.
Well, he was on the roster. Obviously, he didn't
technically
play at all. But yeah, he's been a nice addition. And boy, I mean, obviously we miss Ben White, but can you imagine on the right side if we didn't have Timber? Whew, yikes.
Well, yeah, we've seen it, and Partey was doing better when he's not asked to be a right back. He's in the midfield like we want him to be. He helps out there. So
yeah.
All right, what is coming up for next week?
Right, so we mentioned the Champions League draw is on Friday, but before that, preceding that is the last of the Champions League phase games. We'll be at Girona. Spanish side currently sitting 31st in the table on 3 points. They are eliminated, so this will be their final Champions League game, their first appearance in any European competition. So good for them. But yeah, we'll take a trip to Catalonia to play them and finish up the league phase. Again, as we said, a draw, any result, a draw or a win clinches our spot in the next round. I expect to see Lewis Skelly playing there, since he probably won't be playing. Few more for in the next couple of English games, and then the big one. Speaking of English games, on Sunday, Premier League match, home to Manchester City. That will be, at least as of today, is set to be on Peacock. So big week coming up.
All right. So, thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen to our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with a link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to comment or reply on one of our episodes, one of our shorts, or one of our full-length episodes on your platform of choice. So if you're listening, do it in your podcast player. If you're watching on YouTube, do it there. If you're on TikTok or Instagram or one of those places, do it there. We record the show using Zencastr. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our social pages. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
The only red we want to see.